Hello, and welcome to today's session on SYSPRO Productivity Hacks. We're going to be talking about SYSPRO alerts and workflows. My name is Darshni Shah. I'm the K3 SYSPRO Product Manager. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen and hear me properly. If you can just raise your hands really quickly, that would be great. Excellent. I see some few hands raised. We'll get started. In today's session, we're going to cover a couple of different things. As we all know, there's some system flows that are available directly within SYSPRO, but I want to focus today on flows that are specific to your business. How do you go ahead and control your business using some of the tools that are available within the product itself? And with that, what I want to do is actually go through a couple of scenarios that you may encounter in your day-to-day business. What do I mean by system flows? Well, an example of a system flow is when you have a requisition process, you need to go ahead and purchase an item. SYSPRO has a requisition system that allows you to identify the need, identify a need for goods or services that need to be purchased. You can raise that request, and that request gets routed through a number of different user codes. That, in turn, when approved, gets converted to a purchase order. That happens automatically. You don't need to set up a flow. The system itself engages with the user through that process. Another example of the system flow is engineering change control. When you have design changes within your bill of material, you have the ability to go ahead and cover that directly from the engineering change control, from designing, requesting a change, updating your bill of material, to approving. Another example of a system flow directly. However, what I want to spend most of the time in today's session about is business flows. There are various times when you need to automate a process. You need to make it easier for the users to engage with the system. Something needs to happen after something's happened, and you want that to be automatically triggered. You may have a trigger, something that needs to, again, from a business standpoint, happen to make sure, rather than having a user with a sticky note on their monitor to remind them to do something, have the system trigger that. You may have notifications that you need to push through. When a particular threshold is reached, for example, if inventory falls below a certain amount, you may want to notify the purchaser so that they make sure they've got sufficient stock on hand. You may want to notify the production supervisor to let them know what they need to do to manage the production schedule. You may also want to look at alerting an operator to make sure that your business rules are followed. And sometimes it's necessary to go ahead and track what's happening in the system, what's happened historically, so that you're building that history up. And we're going to cover all of these different scenarios. Now, when I talk about automation, there are a number of tools for automation alert notification that are available within SYSPRO. We're not going to cover all of them today. It's a short session, just 20 minutes. You've got everything from data switch to SYSPRO workflow services, VB scripting. We've got security systems with password definition, flow graphs, insights themselves that help drive user behavior. All of that's available. We've covered a number of those in different sessions, but today what we're going to focus on are things called electronic signatures, triggers, and events. I'm going to start out with a business scenario. We have a need to simplify automation. So assuming that we've not already used data switch, we're not looking at using workflow, what we're looking to do is go ahead and make sure that we've got quicker time to market. From a production standpoint, what's happening is we're not identifying and notifying the warehouse staff as quickly as we should when a job gets completed. So what we've done is we've instituted a new business process where a production planner, the supervisor themselves, are responsible for allocating and issuing material to the jobs. We want to simplify that because when they issue the material and labor, they're doing a kit issue from SYSPRO speak, but we want them to go ahead and immediately receipt that job into stock. We need that to trigger automatically. It's a new process. We need to make sure, because our time to market is delayed and the fact that the warehouse personnel and the sales staff aren't getting the visibility they need quickly, as soon as that job's receipted into stock is when they can start moving that path forward as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump directly into SYSPRO. What I'm showcasing today is SYSPRO 8. However, the functionality that we're covering is available in previous versions of SYSPRO as well, all the way from SYSPRO 6.1 higher. Now, we're talking about job issues. I'm going to go ahead and launch my job issue program. And within the job issue itself, I have the ability to go ahead and process a KIT issue. Now, in this case, my business process is really nice and simple. All I need to do is go ahead and KIT issue my quantity, both material and labor, and post that through. As soon as I'm ready to post through, what I want to do is go ahead and have the job receipt screen pop up so that I remember as an operator, I need to now receipt that job into stock right away. So once KIT issue goes and processes, anyone that's used SYSPRO knows that the KIT issue will go ahead and process and we're done with the journal number. However, what you're seeing in here is the fact that I have a job receipt program that's popped up automatically with the job number populated. Now I can go ahead and start transacting and receiving that quantity in and mark that job as completed. So I've done that relatively quickly. The way that I did that is using an electronic signature. So let's take a look and see what that is. Now I can of course complete my transaction as I would normally, but in this case, you get the sense of what it is I'm trying to do. So what I want to do is go ahead and show you my electronic signatures. I have it set up in my favorites menu. You have it available also on your toolbar from the setup menu. So as I launch the electronic signatures, you have the option to configure these either based on your company, your group, or role or operator. And you've got the ability to control that from multiple different variables. You need to enable electronic signatures. They're not enabled by default. And your configuration options can go ahead and be done at different levels. With the transactions, we've got 860 transactions available for us to go ahead and configure. Now, in this case, what I'm most interested in is going to be my WIP. What I've gone ahead and done is created a new electronic signature against my KIT issue. So this particular program will go ahead and allow me to automate and launch a separate program. The way that I do that is when I go ahead and double click on the KIT issue, I have a number of different options available for me. By default, I have the ability to go ahead and whenever a KIT issue happens, do a number of different things. I can trigger an electronic signature, which requires a go, no-go decision. We'll go into a little bit more of what that looks like later on. I can allow this transaction, which means that the system's not going to do anything. It's just going to process the KIT issue as you would normally. I can deny it. So it's a good way from a security standpoint to prevent an operator from processing. Or I can choose to log only. When I log, I then have the ability to do some additional things. And that's what I've done, is when I choose to log, when I go to my logging and trigger options, whenever that transaction is successful, I set up a trigger to do something. Now in this case, what I've chosen to do is run a VB script to in turn launch a program. I have a number of different trigger types that I have available. I can send an email, run the VB script as you've seen I've done. I can actually choose to run a program. I could have launched my job receipt program directly from here. However, I wanted also to pass the variable of that job number, which is why I chose to do a VB script instead. I can also run an external application. So if I wanted to launch, for example, bartender to print a label for this particular job, I could go ahead and trigger that off from here. I can notify, or I can even choose to run an SRS report. So a number of different options are available, and we'll go through some of those scenarios. So with a quick, simple transaction, I've now been able to go ahead and change the process flow from issuing material and labor to a job to going ahead and making it available directly in the system for me. So that's a quick example of how we can go ahead and identify automation. The next example I want to go into is notifications. We want to have tighter cache control. When a customer payment comes in for over 1,000, we're really managing our cash tightly right now. What I want to do is make sure that our sales director is notified so that they're able to go ahead and engage better with that customer. And we also want to message the finance director. We want to make sure that they're aware that they've got that cash available for them right away. Slightly important right now. So in this case, if I come back into SYSPRO and process a payment, now in this case, I've decided to set my threshold. I don't want to know about all my payments. I only want to know about payments that are greater than a particular amount. I've chosen £1,000. It can be whatever you so choose. So in this case, I'm going to take a payment for £1,200, deposit in my bank, automatically apply my payment. And when I post my payment through, what you're going to see is an email is going to come through to me with some details in and around the payment, who it was received from, and the fact that it's come in today. And I can choose to send that to multiple people. And the finance directors also received a notification in their message inbox. They're now living in SYSPRO, they're able to see that there's actually a payment that's come through. So very quickly, what I've been able to do is trigger off notification alerts for a payment. Again, I'm going to go back into my electronic signatures. And in this case, the electronic signature that I'm interested in is going to be the accounts receivable. So let's see quickly what I've done in here, because I've done a little bit more than what I've done in my previous. I've got a payment posted signature. And once the payment's posted, that's fine. But what I've also done is add an additional condition in. When payment is received, and I've defined that condition, which means I have now the ability to go ahead and add logic to when this particular trigger gets fired off. I don't want notification for everything, but if the check value for this particular payment is greater than 1,000, it's going to go ahead and fire off that notification. You can choose within here to select from any number of fields that are captured within that particular program. So you can build the logic that's important to you and your business. So very quickly, we've been able to go ahead and set up a transaction successful, which is similar to what we did before. And in this case, what you'll notice I've done is the triggers. I have two different triggers. I've configured an email, and within the email, I've put in some variables that show specific values associated with each individual transaction. So now I'm sending information specific to what that transaction was. So in this case, it was £1,200, not 15, and it was customer one. Who that email goes to, and I've added a separate event that's also going to fire off at the same time, which is writing to a message inbox. So with one simple setup, I've been able to add in logic. I've also been able to fire off two different transactions. My final example that I want to go through is coming up in a minute. One other notification that I also want to talk about. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a teaser on this. With SYSPRO 8 only, what we've introduced is the concept of a rules engine. SYSPRO's rules engine actually helps streamline your business processes. It acts very much like a sophisticated if-then statement for any of the developers on the call. It's a rule translator. So what you're getting is a set of services that monitor all your SYSPRO transactions in real time. And once the set of rules that you've defined are hit, it analyzes and then goes ahead and determines when to send the notification through. So you can send the notification through into SYSPRO Avanti. You can send it through into SYSPRO Harmony. You can trigger off a bot. So as you can see, some innovation elements tying in. And of course, you can go ahead and notify into Espresso. And the rules engine fires off on the back end, which means that it can go ahead and trigger regardless of where that transaction got captured. There'll be more that we'll be showing in the rules engine tomorrow, but I just wanted to talk to the fact that it's another notification platform that SYSPRO has made available as well. Now, I promised you one more example. So on to our final example. And in this case, I'm going to talk a little bit about alerts. You want to control your sales process. If you have a scenario where certain customers cannot be sold restricted products, now in my example, I've got US customers that cannot be sold specific products because they're not approved for that market. So what I've done is identified that customer type to make sure that they are in that bucket of customers I cannot sell it to, and determine what that restricted product is. And in this case, it's really simple. I've got all of those products sitting into a product class. So if I come in here and I go ahead and try and raise a sales order, when I raise that sales order, I'm going to go ahead and raise it for a customer that I have set up with a customer type that is US. And I'm going to add a line for them that I'm going to sell to them. It's asking me if I want to add this line. And at this point, as an operator, I've been denied access to add that because the controlled item sale is not allowed for this customer. I can choose the message that comes across in here, but what it will do is cancel that sales order line addition. So I've now done it not at a program level, but at an individual action level. Because with electronic signatures, what I also have the ability to do is go ahead and configure them based on specific actions. So I'm going to jump back into my electronic signatures, and I apologize, I am jumping back and forth, but I want to show you the concepts of what's possible within the system. So you'll notice at a glance that I've got triggers that I can add based on suppliers added, changed, and deleted, 3 different actions. But in this case, I want to jump down all the way to my sales orders. And within this list view, I can do my search, I can do whatever I like. I don't want to do it at the add sales order level, but I actually want to do it at the add merchandise level. So similar to my previous trigger, what I've done is I've added in a new condition. My condition is going to be based, in this case, on a custom form field that I've defined against the customer master. I've defined a customer type, and in this case, if it's US Med, I'm not allowed to sell them anything within a product class of T5. Now, you can tie that to whatever makes sense from your data set perspective and how that's set up for your business and the business rules that you've got. But within the electronic signatures, what this means is I have access to data beyond what's available just in the sales order entry program. I've got access to custom form fields. I have access to master data that's tied in and around sales orders. I'm not stuck to just the sales order transaction details. And what you'll notice is the access control level has been set to denied. I've now gone ahead and prevented something from happening. What you could do, and we haven't talked about within the electronic signatures, is also add in an effective date range. So if something is only true for a month, 2 months, you can go ahead and start putting that date range in without having to remember to come back in and switch that electronic signature off. So it's really nice and simple in terms of the value you can add from business flow perspective. The last thing that I want to talk about is going to be track history. Oftentimes we get a question saying, I really want to have access to information where the amendment journal is just not holding enough value. You determine what that business rule is. And what you have within electronic signatures is a query where you can start tracking all of the information that you've got in terms of transactions that are being passed through. So what you'll notice is I have data that I'm capturing based on when a supplier was changed, a payment was posted, when a job was created, when I did kit issues. And I have the ability also to track values before and after, what I'm actually having change as that information is getting captured. And the way to do that is one last piece that we didn't look at within the electronic signature setup itself. Again, it's going to go ahead and be available when I go and manage my signature itself. I do need to configure that signature. And what you'll notice is Under my logging and trigger options, with my log only, I have the option to have a detailed log. And with the configure detail log, I choose what values I want to have written to that detail log. I can choose, of course, to have absolutely everything written to it, including values associated with the company, the operator, and even the date when that transaction happened. So some rich logging functionality that I have available within just the sense of electronic signatures. Now, we spent a lot of time today talking about electronic signatures. Fundamentally, they were introduced to have security access, transaction logging, and event triggering. It's about increasing control. The initial introduction of electronic signatures was actually for Sarbanes-Oxley compliance to provide traceability for any auditors to make sure that only the people with the correct restrictions were able to go ahead and process transactions. It also has tighter control for your automating workflow, and it allows you then to have various activities you can trace. However, before electronic signatures became available, we also had the idea of triggers to allow you to invoke third-party applications and events that allow you to monitor things that happen within SYSPRO as they occur. So if you're in an older version of SYSPRO, electronic signatures are not available to you, you may want to also explore a trigger program and the event management setup. So within the trigger program itself, there are a number of different programs and activities after which you can go ahead and configure and process similar transactions. I can choose to go ahead and run a program, custom report, a separate application, or write to the message inbox. So as you can see, the functionality is slightly limited there. And event management is when a certain activity happens. And I've got a number of different events that are available to me. If I place a customer on hold, when the stock on hand goes negative, are two really popular ones. Those are all available, but for me, my preference is always to go to electronic signatures because it provides me with that granular ability to drive my business forward. And finally, the rules engine, which we'll spend a little bit more time talking about within the SYSPRO 8 session tomorrow. It is also another tool available, but sitting more so in the back end rather than the front end. So we've gone through a whistle-stop tour of some of the things you can do. It by no means was a setup session in terms of training you how to set up electronic signatures. It really is a touch point. If you want to learn more, help is a great way to go ahead and access that information. Simply by launching the electronic signatures program and clicking on F1 on your keyboard, you can access the info zone. This is for a learning channel where there's a reference guide for electronic signatures, and within the security training guide, there's additional information. And if you've sat through one of our administration training courses, you'll have already been introduced to electronic signatures to give you a bit of a sense of what you can do with it. That is our quick session today on what you can do from a triggers and workflow perspective. We still have probably a little bit of time. I apologize, we are running over, but I am available. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A window and I'll try and see what I can answer today. I have a question for someone who wants to see the VB script. Yes, absolutely happy to show you that. So what we've done is you can obviously launch the job receipt program. That's not a problem at all. But within the WIP, what I've done is actually pass the parameter to go ahead and give you the job number. So if I drill into the trigger, and I'll show you the VB script, it's very, very simple. All I've done is go ahead and call the syntax when the transaction's done to launch a program, call the program name, and pass the key, which in this case is the job number. So really nice and simple. What you'll notice also is in SYSPRO 8, we're looking at a slightly new view of the VB script editor. But again, that's more for tomorrow. Hopefully that gives you a sense of what that looks like, nice and simple. Great. Excellent. Looks like there's not too many other questions coming through. I am available if you want to drop me an email afterwards. We'll share the slide and the recording with you, and you'll have my contact details. So if you think of anything afterwards, you're welcome to do that. In the meantime, I really appreciate everyone joining, considering everything going on today. So please stay safe, be well. Thanks for joining.